Princess Valera had always believed that vows were stronger than stars. She stood on the highest balcony of the celestial court, looking out at the wide, glowing sky of her homeworld. The air shimmered with soft light, and distant ships moved like slow-moving stars across the horizon. This was the heart of the Ithari Dominion, a place of beauty, power, and ancient rules. Valera had grown up surrounded by those rules, and from a young age she had chosen to break one of the most important. She would never marry. Among the Ithari, marriage was not about love or choice. It was about duty. It was about joining families, strengthening political bonds, and securing power across star systems. Princesses were not daughters. They were bridges between empires. Valera had seen her older cousins sent away to distant worlds, their smiles forced, their voices silenced by duty. She had promised herself she would not become one of them. Her wings, made of light and soft crystal-like feathers, shifted slightly as a warm breeze passed by. The Ithari were a tall, graceful people, their forms glowing faintly in the light of their sun. Valera was no different. Her long silver hair floated gently around her face, and her eyes reflected the stars like pools of pale blue fire. Below her, the great hall of the celestial court was filled with nobles, advisors, and leaders from across the Dominion. Their voices rose like a low hum of debate and quiet argument. Today was an important day. The humans were coming. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had appeared only a few cycles ago, traveling beyond their home system with fast, rough-looking ships that lacked the elegance of older civilizations. Many in the court believed they would not last long among the powerful empires of the stars. They were seen as fragile, short-lived, and too emotional to survive the cold logic of galactic politics. Valera had never seen a human before. She had only read reports and watched recordings. Small, soft-skinned, no wings, no natural glow, no long lifespans. And yet something about them made her curious. They were different from the ancient, careful species that filled the Dominion. A soft chime sounded behind her. "Princess," said a calm voice. Valera turned to see her advisor, Lyrian, standing at the doorway. Lyrian had served her family for centuries and carried herself with quiet wisdom. His eyes, like deep pools of gold, studied Valera with gentle concern. "The human ship has arrived," he said. "The court is ready to receive them." Valera took a slow breath. "I will come." As she walked through the long, glowing corridors, she felt the weight of many eyes on her. Whispers followed her like shadows. "She still refuses all offers. She shames her bloodline. She thinks she is above tradition." Valera kept her head high. She had heard it all before. The great doors of the celestial hall opened, and light poured in like a wave. The hall was vast, with a floor that reflected the sky above as if it were made of glass. Tall pillars rose like frozen beams of light, and banners of different star systems hung in the air, gently floating without strings. At the center of the hall stood a small group of humans. They looked almost out of place in such a grand space. Their leader stood at the front. He was taller than the others, though still shorter than most Ithari. He wore a simple dark uniform, and his hair was a deep brown, cut short and neat. His face showed signs of age and stress, but his eyes were steady and alert. This was Commander Elias Ward. Valera stopped walking. She didn't know why. There was nothing special about him at first glance. He had no wings, no glow, no marks of ancient power. And yet something about the way he stood caught her attention. He did not look afraid. He did not look proud. He looked present, as if he truly saw the place he stood in rather than just the power it represented. The court leader stepped forward and began the formal welcome. Long, careful words filled the air, describing peace, cooperation, and the balance of power among the stars. The humans listened, some shifting nervously, others trying to copy the respectful posture of the Ithari nobles. Elias did not copy them perfectly. He stood straight, hands at his sides, his eyes moving slowly around the hall, not in a rude way, in a curious way. Valera felt a strange pull in her chest. When it was Elias' turn to speak, he stepped forward. There was a brief pause as he seemed to search for the right words. "Thank you for receiving us," he said in clear, simple tones. "We come from far away, and we know we are small compared to the great powers of this galaxy, but we come with open hands, not closed fists." A low murmur moved through the hall. Some nobles smiled in amusement. Others frowned. Valera leaned forward slightly, listening. Elias continued, "We don't ask for protection, we ask for understanding. We want to learn how to live among the stars, not just survive in them." His words were not perfect. They were not polished, but they felt real. The court leader nodded and gestured for the talks to begin. Advisors and diplomats moved into small groups, discussing trade routes, borders, and shared threats. Valera did not join them. Instead, she found herself walking closer to the human group. Elias noticed her approach and stiffened slightly. He bowed, though it was not quite the right angle or style. "Princess," he said carefully. Valera studied him up close. His eyes were a warm brown, and there were small lines at the corners from smiling or squinting in bright light. He smelled faintly of metal and something sharp and clean. "You are not afraid," she said. Elias blinked. "I am, just not in the way you might expect." Valera tilted her head. "Explain." "I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing," he said, "of making things worse instead of better." That answer surprised her. Most who stood before her spoke with confidence, even when they hid fear behind polite words. "You speak plainly," she said. Elias gave a small, unsure smile. "It's a habit." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the court move around them. "Why did you come here?" Valera asked. Elias looked at her, really looked at her, not as a symbol or a ruler, but as a person. "Because something is coming," he said quietly. "Something that doesn't care about borders or power. We've seen it destroy worlds. We don't want to be alone when it reaches this part of the galaxy." Valera felt a chill run through her wings. "What is it?" she asked. Elias shook his head. "We don't fully understand it. Only that it moves through space like a shadow, and where it goes, nothing lives for long." Valera thought of the calm sky outside, the peaceful glow of her homeworld. It was hard to imagine such darkness reaching this place. "And you came to us first?" she asked. Elias nodded. "You are one of the strongest. If we stand together, maybe others will follow." Valera studied his face. There was no demand in his eyes, no hidden threat, only hope mixed with fear. Something inside her shifted. Over the next few days, the humans stayed in the celestial court. Talks continued, some slow and difficult, others surprisingly easy. Valera found herself watching Elias more than she should. He spoke kindly to servants, thanked guards, and listened closely when others talked, even when they spoke down to him. He laughed with his team in quiet corners of the hall, a sound that felt strange and warm in a place usually filled with controlled voices. One evening, Valera found him standing alone on a balcony, looking out at the stars. "Do they look different from your world?" she asked. Elias smiled. "No, that's the strange part. Wherever you go, the stars still feel like home." Valera thought about that. For her, home had always been this one world, this one court, these one set of rules. "On my world," Elias continued, "we tell stories about the sky. About how we came from it and how one day we might return to it." "And do you believe those stories?" Valera asked. "I believe we need them," he said. "They remind us that we're part of something bigger." Valera felt her vow press against her thoughts. She had built her life around being separate, being untouchable. And yet here was someone who saw the galaxy as something to belong to, not control. A soft alarm sounded in the distance. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the calm. Elias' posture changed instantly. "That's not part of your court systems, is it?" Valera's eyes narrowed. "No." Moments later, Lyrian rushed onto the balcony. "Princess," he said urgently, "long-range sensors have detected an unknown fleet entering the outer edge of Dominion space. It matches the description the humans gave." Valera's wings spread slightly in shock. Elias closed his eyes for a brief second, then opened them, steady again. "We didn't want to be right," he said. Valera looked at him, at the calm strength in his face, and felt her world tilt. Below them, the peaceful court began to fill with hurried voices and moving lights. The sky, once calm and beautiful, now felt wide and waiting. For the first time since she had made her vow, Princess Valera wondered if some promises were not meant to be kept forever. And far beyond the stars, something dark was moving closer. The alarm spread through the celestial court like a cold wind. Lights shifted from soft gold to sharp blue as defense systems awakened across the palace. The calm voices of advisors turned into fast, worried whispers. Guards moved into position along the high windows and wide doors, their glowing armor reflecting the sudden change in mood. Princess Valera stood on the balcony, her wings slightly open, staring at the dark sky. She could not see the unknown fleet yet, but she could feel it in the air. The stars felt farther away, colder. Elias stood beside her, already speaking into a small device on his wrist. His voice was calm, but there was tension in his shoulders. "All human ships move to alert status," he said. "Stay close to the station and wait for orders." Valera watched him with a mix of curiosity and concern. He did not look like a warrior. He did not carry ancient weapons or wear shining armor, and yet in this moment he seemed more ready for what was coming than many of her own people. Lyrian cleared his throat. "Princess, the High Council is calling for an emergency meeting. They want the humans present as well," Valera nodded. "Then we will go together." The three of them walked through the glowing halls, now filled with fast-moving figures and floating screens showing maps of space. The unknown fleet appeared as a cluster of dark shapes at the edge of Dominion territory. It moved slowly, but with a steady purpose, like a shadow that could not be stopped by light. Inside the council chamber, the air felt heavy. The leaders of the Dominion sat in a wide circle, their faces serious, their wings folded tight. When Valera and Elias entered, all eyes turned toward them. One of the elders spoke first. "Commander Ward, you said this threat would come. Now it is here. Tell us what you know." Elias took a step forward. He did not bow this time. He stood straight, meeting their glowing eyes. "We call them the Void Drift," he said. "Not because we know what they are, but because they leave nothing behind. No signals, no survivors, just empty space." A low sound of unease moved through the room. "How many worlds?" another leader asked. Elias paused. "Four that we know of. 2 were human colonies. The others belonged to species we never got a chance to meet." Valera felt a tightness in her chest. "And how did you survive?" Lyrian asked. Elias looked down for a moment. "We ran, we watched. We learned that fighting them head-on only made them change their patterns. They adapt fast, but they don't chase what doesn't challenge them." "So you led them here?" one of the elders said sharply. Elias lifted his head. "No, we tried to stay hidden, but the galaxy is big and shadows move in strange ways. They were always going to reach this part of space." Silence filled the chamber. Valera stepped forward. "We will not run." Some of the elders turned to her in surprise. "This is our home," she continued. "We have defended it for thousands of cycles. We will not become another empty place in their path." Elias looked at her, something like respect in his eyes. The council debated for hours. Some argued for retreat, others for calling distant allies. A few spoke of ancient weapons that had not been used in generations. Through it all, Valera stayed close to Elias. She listened as he described human battle tactics, how they relied on teamwork and quick thinking rather than raw power. He spoke of small ships working together, of pilots trusting each other with their lives. "You fight like a single mind," Valera said quietly. Elias nodded. "We have to. Alone, we don't last long." When the meeting ended, the decision was made. The Dominion would prepare its defenses. The humans would stand with them. Later that night, Valera walked through the quiet halls of the palace. Most of the court had gone to prepare their fleets or send messages to distant systems. The palace felt larger and emptier than before. She found Elias in a training chamber, watching a group of human soldiers run through drills. They moved quickly, calling out to each other, helping those who stumbled, never leaving anyone behind. "You don't treat them like tools," Valera said. Elias smiled slightly. "They're not. They're people. They have families, dreams, plans for when all this is over." Valera thought of her own people, bound by tradition and duty. "Do you ever wish you had more time?" she asked. "Your lives are so short." Elias looked at the floor for a moment. "Sometimes, but short lives make every moment louder. We love hard, we fight hard, we hope hard." Valera felt those words settle deep inside her. Days passed. The unknown fleet moved closer, its dark shapes growing larger on the screens. The Dominion's great ships gathered in orbit, their ancient hulls glowing with stored energy. Human ships joined them, smaller but fast, moving in tight formations. Valera watched the preparations from the command tower. The scale of it all made her feel small. Whole worlds were holding their breath. Elias stood beside her, hands resting on the rail. "You don't have to be here," he said. "You're a princess, you should be somewhere safe." Valera shook her head. "This is my people's future, I will not hide from it." Elias studied her, then nodded. "I'm glad you're here." The first sign of the void drift came as a change in the stars. Light bent strangely near the edge of space, like the sky itself was folding. Dark shapes emerged, smooth and silent, their surfaces absorbing the glow around them. The room filled with warning tones. "All fleets hold position," came the voice of the Dominion's lead commander. Valera's wings trembled. Human ships moved forward, forming a wide line in front of the larger Dominion vessels. "What are they doing?" one of the Ithari officers asked. Elias leaned forward. "They're buying time." The first energy blasts lit up space, flashing like brief suns. The void drift did not fire back at first. They moved, shifting their shapes, slipping through the attacks like smoke through fingers. Human pilots adjusted instantly, calling out changes, tightening their formation. Left wing, fall back. Center, push forward. Stay together, Elias said into his device. Valera watched as small human ships took hits meant for larger Dominion cruisers. Shields flared. Some ships fell back, damaged but still moving, always covered by another. "They're protecting us," Valera whispered. "They don't see it that way," Elias replied. "They see it as protecting everyone." The Dominion's ancient weapons began to charge, massive beams of light forming along their ship's sides. The power buildup made the stars around them glow brighter. "Now," the lead commander said. The beams fired, cutting through space in wide arcs. This time the void drift reacted. Several of the dark shapes broke apart, dissolving into faint dust that faded into nothing. A wave of hope moved through the command tower, but the void drift changed. New shapes formed at the back of their fleet, thicker, stronger. They moved faster, pushing toward the human line. "Elias," Valera said, fear in her voice. "I see it," he replied. "All ships fall back in stages, don't break formation." A human ship took a direct hit and went dark. Another moved in, locking shields with it, dragging it out of danger. Valera felt her heart race. These people, these short-lived beings, were standing between her world and something that could erase it. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the void drift slowed. The Dominion's weapons fired again and again, forcing the dark fleet to pull back. Slowly, like a shadow retreating from light, they began to fade into the distance. A long, shaky breath filled the command tower. "We held," someone said. Valera turned to Elias. His face was pale, but his eyes were still steady. "You did more than hold," she said. "You saved us." Elias shook his head. "We saved each other." Later, as the fleets returned to orbit, Valera and Elias stood once more on the balcony. The stars looked the same as before, calm. Beautiful, but Valera knew now how close they had come to losing everything. "My vow," she said softly. "It was about protecting myself, about staying untouched by duty and loss." Elias listened quietly. "But today," she continued, "I saw people who choose duty even when it costs them everything." Elias met her gaze. "We choose each other, that's the difference." Valera felt warmth spread through her wings. Far away, beyond what even their strongest sensors could see, the void drift still moved. But now, it was not moving toward a single, unprepared world. It was moving toward a galaxy that had begun to stand together. The galaxy did not sleep after the first battle. Across the Ithari Dominion, ships moved between worlds, carrying messages, supplies, and quiet fear. The story of the Dark Fleet spread quickly. Some worlds believed it. Others said it was only a rare storm in space, something that would pass. Princess Valera knew better. She stood in the command tower every day, watching the maps change. Small lights showed the movement of fleets, trade ships, and patrols. At the edge of the screen, far away and faint, a dark shape marked the path of the void drift. It was slow, but it did not stop. Elias stood nearby, speaking with both human and Ithari officers. The two groups had started to work together more easily now. There were still differences in language and custom, but danger had a way of making things simple. One morning, a human scout ship returned with heavy damage. Its hull was burned and its shields were almost gone. The pilot was shaken but alive. "They didn't turn away," the pilot said. "They're splitting up, moving in more than one direction." That news hit the room like a stone dropped into still water. "They're hunting," Lyrian said quietly. The council was called again. This time there was no long debate about whether the threat was real. Everyone in the room could feel it. "They are learning," one of the elders said, "just as the humans warned us." Valera looked at Elias. "Can they be stopped?" Elias did not answer right away. "Everything can be stopped," he said finally. "The question is what it will cost." The council decided to send fleets to protect the outer worlds. Smaller systems, weaker colonies, and trade stations were put under guard. The Dominion had power, but it could not be everywhere at once. Neither could the humans. Days turned into weeks. The first loss came from a distant mining world. The void drift passed through the system like a silent storm. When help arrived, there were no ships, no cities, no signs of life, just empty space and broken rocks. Valera closed her eyes when she saw the report. Elias placed a hand on the rail beside her. He did not touch her, but the closeness was enough to feel his presence. "I'm sorry," he said. "For them," Valera replied. For all of us. The next loss came sooner. A human outpost near a blue star sent a final message. It was short and simple. They're here, tell everyone to stand together. After that silence, the pressure on the command tower grew heavier. Officers worked long hours, pilots slept in their ships, engineers barely left their stations. Valera began to feel the weight of her people's fear. Everywhere she walked, she saw it in their eyes. The Ithari were ancient and proud, but even ancient things could break. One evening, she found Elias alone in a quiet room, looking at a small screen. It showed a green world with clouds and oceans. Is that Earth? Valera asked. He nodded. A live feed from a satellite we left behind. Valera watched the slow turn of the planet. It looked peaceful. Is your family there? She asked. Yes, Elias said. My sister. Her children? Valera felt a tightness in her chest. Do they know what is coming? They know something is wrong, he said. We don't want to scare them more than we have to. Valera stepped closer. You carry this alone. Elias looked at her. So do you. For a moment they stood in silence, sharing the same heavy thought. The next attack came fast and close. A trade world near the heart of the Dominion went dark without warning. Sensors showed the void drift moving in strange patterns, slipping past patrols like they were not even there. The lead commander sent out a call. All available ships move to intercept. Human and Ithari fleets rushed to the location. Valera and Elias watched from the command tower as the battle unfolded. This time, the void drift did not test them. It pushed forward with force. Dark shapes slammed into shields. Energy beams lit up space. The sky on the screen looked like it was breaking apart. Human ships moved in tight groups, weaving between larger Ithari cruisers. They took hits, fell back, and moved forward again. They did not stop. One human ship lost its engines and began to drift toward the dark fleet. Pull back, Elias said into his device. You're too close. The pilot's voice came through, strained but steady. Can't. If I move, they'll hit the carrier behind me. The small ship turned slightly, placing itself between the void drift and a large Ithari vessel filled with civilians. The impact was bright and sudden. Valera gasped. Her wings spread wide without her realizing it. The carrier escaped. The human ship did not. The room went silent for a moment. Elias closed his eyes. The battle continued, but something had changed. The Ithari fleet moved forward, no longer staying behind the human line. Their ships formed a wide wall, matching the human formation. They're copying us, a human officer said softly. They're standing with you, Valera replied. Together, they pushed the void drift back. The dark shapes began to scatter, breaking into smaller groups and retreating into the black. The trade world was damaged, but it still lived. After the battle, Valera found Elias on the same balcony where everything had begun. The pilot, she said. What was his name? Jonah, Elias replied. He liked old music and bad jokes. Valera looked up at the stars. He saved my people. He saved people, Elias said. That's how he would see it. Valera felt a deep ache inside her, mixed with something else, respect, gratitude, and a growing fire. The council met again, but this time Valera did not wait to be called. She walked into the chamber and spoke before anyone else could. We cannot keep reacting, she said. We cannot keep losing worlds and people and waiting for the next attack. The elders listened. The void drift adapts, she continued. So must we. The humans do not fight with only strength, they fight with unity. She turned to Elias. What do you need? Elias took a breath. We need a place to draw them in, a place we choose. We set a trap instead of waiting to be hunted. Murmurs filled the room. That would put a world at risk, one elder said. Yes, Elias replied. It would, but it could save many more. Valera stepped forward. Then we choose a world that can fight back. Silence followed. Slowly, Lyrian nodded. The Forge system. A system of heavy industry and strong defenses. A place built for ships, not cities. The plan formed quickly after that. Human and Ithari fleets would gather there. Signals would be sent out loud and clear like a challenge across the stars. Valera watched as the messages were prepared. You are calling them to you, she said to Elias. He nodded. We're telling them we're not running anymore. Before the fleets left, Valera stood in front of both human and Ithari crews. The hangar was filled with ships and people from many worlds, different shapes, different voices, one purpose. You stand here today not as separate peoples, she said. You stand as one line between the light and the dark. She looked at Elias, then back at the crowd. Whatever happens in the Forge system, the galaxy will remember this moment, the moment we chose each other. A low sound of agreement filled the hangar. The journey to the forge system felt longer than it was. Space stretched wide and empty around the fleets. When they arrived, the system glowed with the light of factories, shipyards, and defense platforms. It was a strong place, a hard place, perfect for a stand. The signal was sent. The wait began, hours passed. Then a change in the stars. The void drift arrived not as a single shadow, but as a storm. Dark shapes filled the edge of space, more than Valera had ever seen. Elia's voice came over the command channel. "All ships hold steady." Valera stood beside him, her wings tight against her back, her heart racing. The first wave hit like a falling sky. Energy and darkness clashed. Human and Ethari ships moved as one, covering each other, calling out warnings and support. The void drift pushed harder than ever. A section of the defense line broke. "Elias!" Valera cried. Human ships surged forward to fill the gap. Ethari cruisers followed, their great weapons firing in wide arcs. For a moment it worked. Then the void drift changed again. Dark shapes began to move past the fleets, heading straight for the forge system itself. "They're going for the world," an officer shouted. Elias turned to Valera. "If they reach the core stations, it's over." Valera did not hesitate. She stepped forward and opened a command channel to the entire fleet. "All ships," she said, her voice clear and strong, "follow me." Elias looked at her in shock. "Valera, what are you doing?" "I am done watching," she said. "This is my home, and I will stand in front of it." She took control of the lead Ethari ship and moved it forward directly into the path of the dark storm. For a heartbeat, the galaxy seemed to stop. Then human ships moved after her. One by one, dozens, hundreds. They formed a living wall in front of the forge system. Elias whispered, "You don't have to do this." Valera looked at him across the bridge. "Neither did Jonah, neither did your people, but you did it anyway." The void drift slammed into the line. Light and shadow collided. The battle for the galaxy had truly begun. The wall of ships shook as the void drift crashed into it. Light burst across space like breaking waves. Human and Ethari vessels pressed close together, their shields touching, their pilots calling out warnings and support across open channels. The dark shapes of the enemy pushed and twisted, trying to slip through every small opening. Princess Valera stood on the bridge of the lead Ethari ship, her wings tight against her back, her hands gripping the edge of the command rail. The sound of alarms and voices filled the air around her, but her eyes stayed on the great window in front of her. The stars were almost hidden now. Elias stood beside her, his face pale but focused. His voice moved across the fleet, calm and steady, even as the battle grew more violent. "Hold the line, stay close, don't let them separate you." Human ships darted forward and back, covering weak points, pulling damaged vessels out of danger. Ethari cruisers fired wide beams of light, cutting through clusters of dark shapes that broke apart and faded into nothing. For a moment, it looked like the wall might hold. Then a section on the far side of the line flared bright and went dark. "They broke through," an officer shouted. Valera's heart dropped. A group of void drift shapes slipped past the fleet, moving fast toward the glowing stations of the forge system. Elias turned sharply. "Redirect all nearby ships. Don't let them reach the core." Several human ships broke from the line, racing after the dark shapes. Ethari fighters followed, their glowing wings leaving trails of light behind them. Valera watched as one of the stations fired its own defense beams, striking the enemy and slowing them, but more dark shapes moved in behind the first. The enemy did not stop. "They're not trying to win the fight," Lyrian said, his voice tight. "They're trying to end the system." Valera felt a deep fear rise in her chest. The forge system was not just factories and ships. Thousands of people lived there, families, workers, children who looked up at the stars and believed they were safe. Elias turned to her. "We can't keep fighting them this way. They will keep pushing until something breaks." Valera met his eyes. "Then what do we do?" Elias took a breath. "We show them something they can't adapt to." He turned to a human officer. "Bring up the last option." The officer hesitated. "Commander, if we use that, there's no going back." "I know," Elias said. "Do it." A new display appeared in front of Valera. It showed a map of the forge system with a glowing point at its center. "What is that?" she asked. Elias spoke carefully. "A human device. We call it a star anchor. It pulls energy from a system star and releases it in a controlled wave, not enough to destroy the star, but enough to light up everything around it." Valera's wings trembled. "You want to turn the whole system into a weapon?" "Yes," Elias said. Light on a scale they can't hide from. They absorb energy, bend around it, but this would be everywhere at once. Lyrian looked at the display. What will it do to the system? Elias did not look away. It will burn out most of the factories. It will shut down stations. It will leave the system alive but wounded. Valera felt the weight of the choice press down on her. You would sacrifice this world, she said softly. I would save the galaxy, Elias replied. Silence filled the bridge. Valera closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of the vow she had made long ago, the vow to protect herself, to stay untouched by duty and loss. Then she thought of Jonah, of the human pilots, of the Ithari families looking up at the sky, trusting that someone was standing between them and the dark. She opened her eyes. Do it, she said. Elias nodded once. The human officer began the sequence. The star anchor hidden deep within one of the Forge system's stations came to life. Power readings climbed fast. The void drift seemed to sense the change. Dark shapes turned, moving toward the center of the system as if trying to stop what was coming. They know, someone said. Hold them back, Elias ordered. Just a little longer. Human and Ithari ships surged forward, pushing themselves to their limits. Shields flared and failed. Engines burned hot. Pilots shouted as they dodged and weaved through the dark storm. Valera watched as one Ithari cruiser took a direct hit and broke apart in a silent flash of light. Nearby human ships moved in without hesitation, firing at the enemy shapes that had struck it. Her chest hurt. Charge at 70%, the officer called. The star at the heart of the system began to glow brighter on the display. The void drift reached the inner defense line. They're too close, Lyrian said. Elias stepped forward, his voice sharp. All ships fall back toward the outer edge of the system. Now, some pilots hesitated, not wanting to leave the stations and ships behind. Go, Elias repeated. Valera raised her voice across the channel. This is an order from the Princess of the Ithari Dominion. Pull back, live. That did it. The fleets began to retreat, forming a wide circle around the system. The void drift surged forward, filling the space they left behind. Charge at 90%, the officer said, his hands shaking. The star on the display burned like a small sun. Elias looked at Valera. Once this goes off, nothing in the system will be the same. Valera nodded. Neither will the galaxy. Now, Elias shouted. The star anchor released its power. Light exploded outward from the center of the Forge system. It was not a beam, it was not a wave, it was a flood. Space itself seemed to glow. The dark shapes of the void drift were caught in the light, their smooth forms turning bright, then breaking apart, then fading like mist in the morning sun. Across the system, factories and stations went dark, their systems burned out by the surge. But the planet at the heart of the system remained, its surface glowing softly, alive. The light spread outward, touching the edge of the fleet, washing over human and Ithari ships like warm starlight. Then, slowly, it faded. Silence followed. The screens cleared. The dark shapes were gone. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no shadow at the edge of the stars. We did it, someone whispered. Elias let out a long breath he had been holding. He leaned back against the rail, his legs shaking slightly. Valera felt her wings relax. The cost became clear as reports came in. Dozens of ships lost, hundreds of lives, the Forge systems industry crippled, but the galaxy still lived. The void drift had been stopped. News spread fast across the stars. Worlds that had hidden before sent messages of thanks. Fleets that had stayed away now offered support. The story of the human and Ithari stand at the Forge system became something more than a battle. It became a symbol. Days later, the celestial court filled again, but this time the mood was different. There was no quiet pride, no careful distance. There was shared relief. Princess Valera stood at the center of the hall. Elias stood beside her. The elders spoke of rebuilding, of new alliances, of a galaxy that would no longer stand apart in the face of the dark. Then one of them turned to Valera. You led our fleets. You made the final choice. You changed our path. Valera looked around the hall at the faces of her people and at the humans standing among them. I did not do it alone, she said. None of us did, she turned to Elias. For all my life, I believed my vow made me strong, that staying apart would protect me, but I have learned that standing together is the greatest strength of all. The hall was silent. Valera took a step forward. I will no longer refuse connection. I will no longer hide from what binds us. She reached out her hand toward Elias. A soft sound moved through the crowd. Elias looked at her hand, then at her face. He did not kneel. He did not bow. He took her hand as an equal. The court did not erupt in shock. It did not argue. It watched. The union was not announced as a marriage between empires. It was not written as a political bond. It was spoken of as a choice. Across the galaxy, the story spread. Of an ancient princess who had broken her vow not for power, but for trust. Of a human commander who had stood in front of the dark and refused to let the light go out. And of a moment when many worlds stopped being separate stars and became a single sky. On a quiet balcony, much like the one where they had first spoken, Valera and Elias stood together looking out at the calm, glowing night. "The stars still look like home," Elias said softly. Valera smiled. "Now they feel like one." Far away in the deep black between galaxies, shadows still existed. The universe was still wide and dangerous, but it now carried a new story across its endless space. A story that said when humans and others stood side by side, when they chose each other instead of fear, even the darkest night could be pushed back by the simple, powerful light of unity.